free. It's not going too bad. Only two things that I found which maybe will help you. Number one, the question that we've asked of the vacationers and travelers, that they ask per vacationer and per traveler. The secret, of course, there is you work out what was the revenue when it was $200 a ticket. So it's then $200 times quantity. For the travelers, it was 200 times, I think it was 2,000. And you work out the revenue. And then for the vacationers also, I think it was 200 times 800, something like that. Then you get a total revenue, okay? What you then do is you divide it by 200 travelers, or the 2,000, to get the revenue per traveler, okay? Then you say, all right, under the new price, I think it was $250, you then just simply multiply it by the new quantity of travelers. I think it was 1,900 for businessmen and only 600 for vacationers. So then you get the new revenue for businessmen, for business travelers, and then for vacationers. And then you divide it again by the amount of tickets. In this case, the 1,900 and 600. Then you get the revenue per person, and then you just compare it to. I think that was the major mistake. But that was, you always get that one question that you have to think about. The rest I'm satisfied. Some people just got confused when they had to calculate the price elasticity on the change in the prices. Remember, it's always take the new price or the new quantity minus the old quantity divided by the new quantity percentage. So most of students got that right. Then what I found in the demand curve, remember the demand curve is y is equal to mx plus c. Now the y is in the vertical axis. In our case, it is price. Quantity is on the x-axis, right? So your equation should look like something. P equals to 20 minus something q, because it is a negative slope demand curve. Now all that you had to do is to complete the table I gave you, to get to prices of when prices are 0, what quantity then would that be? And that would be 72. And if it was 18, then no one would have, if the price was 18, no one would have buy it. Now, why could you do that? Because if you look at the quantity demand, now I'm only talking about the first income. You can see every time when the price increases by $2, the amount decreased by 8. So you could deduct that if the price increased from 16 to 8, from 16 to 18, the amount of tickets which would then be sold out this would be 0. So you get what's the amount of price of 18 on the vertical axis. This is where it met vertical axis. So price of 18, no one would buy a disc. If you work at another side, you go down all the way to 0 rand, it would be 72. So that's the slope. Slopes fall anyway. So the quotation would have been price equals 18. That's your intercept on the vertical axis, minus 4q for quantity. Okay. But most students could draw at least a curve and plot the curve. Right. It wouldn't. So quantity demand for an income of 12,000 was not that important. I didn't mark that. I only looked at the first one. Right. So I think that was the two main main mistakes. And then on the marginal utility, most of you could work out that the marginal utility of A divided by the price of A equals marginal utility of B over the price of B equals marginal utility of C divided by the price of C. And that would have been 4 products for each one, because marginal utility of A is 20 divided by 2 would give you 10. Marginal utility of B would be then 30 divided by 3 would give you 10. Marginal utility of C divided by 10 will give you 10 divided by 1 also give you 10. So the consumer will buy 4 of each product, but you have to tell me 4 times 2 is 8 plus 4 times 3 4 times 4 times 3 3 times 3 3 times 4 is 12 plus 4 times 1, and if you add it together it's $24. Right, so you spend the whole $24 on buying 4 of A, 4 of B, 4 of C. But buying 4 of A, it is of course 4 times the price of 2, it's 8. Buying 4 of 3, it's 4 times 3 is 12, and that's 20. And the last one buys 4 of 1 with a price of 1, that's 24. Now, if the price change to 4 rand and all the other prices and the budget remain the same, just look where it is again the same amount, the same ratio of 10, and that's 2 products. 40 divided by 4 would give you also 10. So in this case, the consumer now will buy only 2 of A. He will still buy 4 of B and still buy 4 of C, because nothing changed there. His taste didn't change, the prices of B and C didn't change, and his income stayed at 24. So now you could from that you can deduct what will happen with the price. Every time that the price drops by 1, the quantity demand will drop by 1. So if the price is 6 rand, you will demand nothing, and when the price is 0, you'll demand 6, and you can draw the curve, and the curve then is equal, exactly the same again when you say price equals 6 minus 1 Q. See. So that's just a bit difficult 2 questions that I put in for students to think a bit. But the rest I'm satisfied. You've answered the question, discussed why demand elasticity is important. Out of a management perspective, I was very satisfied that a lot of you understand the relationship between price elasticity, revenue, and profit. So most students there got 7, 8, 10 out of 10. Most students. Okay. So that's it. So any other questions around that assignment? Okay. People, you must be able to determine from a list of macroeconomic variables that I give you if it is included in gross domestic product or not. Okay. And I would always like to get your attention back to chapter 15, page 415. Right? On page 415, we have the three methods: production, expenditure, and income. Okay. Right. Sorry, I forgot to tell. I will finish marking all your assignments by tomorrow. I would have been finished tonight, but here in Pretoria East, it's now exactly the 5th time in a month that they stole our cables. So I have no power. So I'm sitting here in the dark. So I want you to go to remember page 415. Page 415 gives us a summary of the 3 methods: the production method, the expenditure method, and the income method. And it was exactly those 3 methods that we looked at the reserve calculator. Right? Remember, when you look at the market value of final goods and services. We look at, of course, the different sectors in the economy. The primary sector, the secondary sector, tertiary sector, and it was their value-added production that gave us value-added at gross domestic prices. And then, of course, one has just have to add taxes and subtract subsidies, and you get GDP at market price. Now, what's important in this problem questions I gave you, that you list a few items and ask if it's included in the GDP or not, and then you have to determine or calculate the value of that GDP. So if you go back to page 425, or if you turn to page 425, those are exactly the questions I asked. Now, if you look at the first one, I say George and John stranded on an island. Right, used clam shells as money for money. Very interesting thing, eh? Shells. Shells were used as money for about 4 centuries. During the time of the Vikings, even before them, shells were generally used as money. If sometime you at holiday at Kruger Park or have it somewhere else where you have some time to read, see if you can get the book by Newland, The History of Money. Now, in the history of money, they talked about what was the first medium of exchange. That's why Bitcoin will never work, because it has a store of value. Bitcoin don't have value. I see Bitcoin tonight under $8,000 US. So it dropped in a month from $20,000 to 8,000. My feeling is that Bitcoin will disappear. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. That will be the next scandal, because you have a store of value. But what I'm going to ask in this question, George and John stranded on an island. Now, remember, this is our economy with only 2 people. Right? Last year, George caught 300 fish and 5 wild boars. Now, that fish that he caught, we have to assume that, they're eating the fish. That's a final product. Right? And 5 wild boars. That was the final product. John grew 200 bunches of bananas. And we assume also in this case that, it's a final product. In the 2-person economy that George and John set up, fish sell for 1 clamshell each, and a boar sells for 10 clamshells each. So they determine their own exchange rate. Right? Bananas go for 5. George paid John a total of 30 clamshells for helping him to dig bait for the fishing. Is that a final product or value added? Helping. He pays him to help him to dig out the bait for fishing. Is that the final product, the value of that, or is it intermediate? It is intermediate. It doesn't add to the GDP, right? Okay. And you also purchased 5 of John's mature banana trees for 30 clamshells each. He bought the trees. That trees is not a final product. The trees still have to grow, and you still have to help to harvest bananas from it. Right. What is the GDP of George and John's island? So you only add the final products to multiply by the price. Just to make sure to tell you in this question here, or in this question, that the intermediate, the value of that intermediate actions or economic activity is not added up. Okay, right, so exactly that one. Question 2 is also very important, because now they are telling us a few national account transactions. Right. Now remember, I told you that it should only be on final products. So if the US government pays $1 billion in salary salaries for government workers, it's not the final product. It's not an expenditure of the government. Right? If government decides that they're going to buy stationery for those workers, yes. Now, in yesterday's budget, government announced that they are going to invest in consumable equipment. So that would be software products, etc., that government officials will have to use. That's not part of GDP. Only the final expenditure. So if they pay salaries of workers, because it comes from the taxes, which are the income of course, consumers. If government pays 1 billion to Social Security recipients, our social grants yesterday, right? Who can help me? Will that 1 billion be part of a GDP or not?
No.
Who can not be?
It will be part of the GDP as consumption, I think.
No, it wouldn't. Why wouldn't it be?
No, it's just a transfer of wealth.
Over the recipient. The recipient will receive it, and then he will go and buy groceries, school clothes, etc. That will form part. But this is a transfer payment, all right? In other words, they receive taxes, they pay it over to other people. That's a transfer payment. A transfer payment is not included in the GDP. Any transfer payment is only what you spend on a final product. Now, the Social Security is not a final product. Of course, the people will receive their Social Security grants, and then they will go and spend. And it's on the product that they spend that will lead to an increase in the GDP, or will be measured under the final accounts. Okay, so just make sure all salaries, all transfers, and all financial transactions are not part of the GDP, right? See, the US government pays US firms $1 billion for newly produced airplane parts. Will that be included?
Yes.
Yes, it will. Why? Because they're from Boeing, they buy airplane parts. It's the final product, right? Okay, because what are they going to do? They're going to use that as in there, to make sure that they maintain their aeroplanes. That's a service. Right. The US government pays $1 billion interest on the holders of government bonds. That can't be included because it's a money transfer. Right. The US government pays $1 billion for Saudi Arabia for crude oil to sold in US government-owned oil reserves. Right. So they buy now. Is that an import or an export? If we buy $1 billion from Saudi Arabia for crude oil, is that the import or an export? For US, it is a
import.
It's import. Now remember what we have to do. We have to subtract imports. Okay. I only use that to calculate or to tell me what's the effect on the GDP. Right? Okay. Then I think the number 6, to calculate the GDP, again, exactly the same. Calculate the GDP. You only add those values that are spent on final goods and services. I'm not going through the whole list, just to tell you. Right. For instance, there are imports. Imports you have to subtract. Right. So what you have to do, you take 6, and if you're not sure if it's included, you just go to that reserve bank that I showed you, and you can see if it's included or not. Or go to back in your textbook. I give you some examples. Okay, that was the idea of these questions. What will be added to the GDP and what not? Right. For instance, yesterday in the budget, it was very promising. What was very promising is that in the first time since 2005, Yes. For the first time, 2005, the government is going to spend on capital expenditure more than they are going to spend on their salaries. They're going to spend, I think, 2.5 billion on infrastructure, small, medium-sized enterprises, the agricultural sector, etc. So that's why I look at yesterday's budget and I realized for the first time, sorry, not salaries, current expenditure. For the first time, I realized that the government is now spending more money on investment or capital goods than they are spending on the normal current expenditure, like computer paper, computer printing screens, software, and all the normal expenditure that government does. Right now, the spending on those, of course, are final goods and services. But remember, if a government buys a new building, in that specific year it will be included, or builds a new building, but not thereafter. Then it's only the depreciation. So these were just a few questions that I put in for us to help. Okay. Now, is there any questions on the GDP? Calculations of GDP.
Doctor, on this specific question, can you quickly refer to the inventory stocks in this example? It has a beginning and an end of year inventory stocks.
Yeah, look, if you're in your inventory stocks, it's only the it's only the changing, eh? Okay. So you get the beginning of the year inventory stocks, right? And somewhere you have to get the end of the term. Beginning of the year inventory stocks.
125.
125, yes. But they don't give us the end stocks, am I right?
It's 100 for the beginning and 125 for the end. So that makes 25 difference.
Okay, so yeah, now I can see it. Then of course it's only the result of the two. Where is it? I don't see it. Beginning of the year inventory stocks, beginning of the year. Oh yeah. So in other words, how many stock did government use? So they started off with 100, right? And they ended by 25, by 125. Did they build their stocks or did they deplete their stocks?
They built it.
So it's only the addition. Okay? It's only the addition that they bought. Right? Because where did they buy it? They buy it from some other firm. It was final goods and services. So you don't calculate the stock because the stock is there, it's not being used. Right? You calculate the change in the stock. Right? You calculate the change in the stock. So it was 125 at the beginning. At the end of the year it's 100, at the end of the year it's 125. So what did they do? They built up 5 billion in stock. Right? Who can help me? Will it add to the GDP or will it lead to the GDP being less? Who can help me here? Will it increase the GDP or will it decrease the GDP?
As the expense is counted, it's increasing.
It's increasing, right? It is increasing. So you take the net stock that to be added, right? Because it's the investment inventories in that year, and that is the net stock. You don't take the stock at the beginning. Why? Because the stock at the beginning of the year, people, was on previous years. Right? And now you get the new stock at the end. Right? So it is inventory investment in inventories. So that is that stock item. If you go back to page 413, inventory investment, right? They tell us it is the addition of unsold goods in company inventories. Right. But now it is government stock. No, it's not government stock. It's total. Right. So, in other words, the goods that the firm produces but doesn't sell during the current period are treated for accounting purpose as if the firm has bought these goods from itself. Right? The convention guarantees that production equals expenditure. Inventory investment can be positive or negative, depending on whether the value of the inventories rises or falls over the course of the year. So what happened with this? Over the year, it increased. So this should be positive. Okay? It should be positive. Right, it would be a positive effect. Right. So you don't use the 100 and 125. Right, any other, please?
Doc, if that was a decrease, so say for example, the beginning was 125 and the ending was 100, would you then subtract or would you just not include it?
No. Sorry. Didn't they start with 100?
Yeah,
at the beginning of the year.
Say in another example, they switch it around and your stock decreases.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Then if the stock decreased, right? If the stock decreased, then of course it would be negative.
You would then subtract it from your GDP, or do you just not include it?
You subtract it from your GDP. Okay.
Thank you.
You subtract it from the GDP. Right, because at the beginning of the year I had 12. At the end of the year they only have 10. So they use how much that they use? They use 2. Right? Because they started with 12 and they ended by 10. Right. So they ended less, and if they ended less, you subtract it. Right. The net result.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay, right. Okay, anything else?
Sorry, Doc, just one other question regarding the stock. Do you then assume that, because what happens in the case where the beginning of year inventory stock is 100, but during the course of the year, the 100 is sold, but then they produce another 125. How do you tell whether the 125 includes the stock that was there at the beginning of the year?
Okay. So what happened? On the shelves of all the companies together, at the beginning of the year it was 100, right? Okay, now they buy, they sell, they build up new stock. Okay. At the end of the year, they end to 125. Okay, so there are now 5 more. There are now 5 more in the stock than it was at the beginning of the year. Right. So you only put the result of it, right? Of the inventory stock. It could be the 5, right? Because the original 100 was already in stock that's been produced in the previous year. Right. So, like I say, inventory investment is the addition of unsold goods to companies' inventories. The addition. Right. Remember all the other that we already went through the process. What they say there, inventory investment is the addition of unsold goods to companies' investments. So if they start with 100 and they end with 125, you calculate the 5. You calculate the 5 because that's the addition, and this is exactly how they calculate it, as they state in 413. Right. In other words, the goods that a firm produces but doesn't sell during the current period are treated, right, for accounting purpose as if the firm had bought those goods from itself. The convention guarantees that production equals expenditure. Inventory investment can be positive or negative depending on whether the value of inventory rises. So if it rises, it's positive. Or fall, then it's negative. Right. So in other words, it's what, in the strict sense of the word, is what they buy from themselves, but it's a value that's been produced. It's a final good, goods and service. So they say explicitly, inventory investment can be positive, depending or negative, depending on whether the value of inventories rises. So if it rises, it's positive, or fall over the course of the year, then it's negative. Okay. This is just how you do it. You take it at the beginning of the year, you take it at the end of the year. If it rises, it's positive. If it's less, it's negative.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
Right. That's GDP. Right. Now, that's one thing about that budget yesterday, because it is about South Africa GDP. What's interesting about yesterday's budget is that government foresee that the economy this year will grow at 1.7%. Remember, we did the practical class and we calculated gross domestic product at market prices. Right? Now, the Department of Finance model tells us that our economy will increase from adjusted 1% economic growth in 2017 to an expected economic growth of 1.7% in 2018 year coming in, and then going over 2% in the next 2 years. We did some calculations this morning, and that will create additional jobs of about 300,000. So the next thing is going to happen, because we're talking about unemployment tonight. I'm very optimistic that South Africa's unemployment rate this year will go lower than the 25%. Now, we've talked in class, there is a lag. If the economy started to expand in the fourth quarter or in the third quarter of last year, it will only take about 6 months before we see an increase in employment and a decrease in unemployment. So we saw that. So what's very interesting from the budget is that government reckon that if they're going to get the necessary foreign investment and infrastructure programs that they're going to introduce this year, they may create about 500,000 jobs. President Ramaphosa said in his negotiations at Davos that we may create 1 million new jobs. Now, this is only what we need. What we need now. This is just an application to the work that you have to do. Right. So what I think what's very important is page 412 and 413. If you're not sure of an item that has to be included in a calculation of GDP, those are the two pages. Because 412 and 413 give us an example. There they talk about investment, inventory investment, residential investment, business fixed investment, and the different government expenditure items. I think that would help you to answer the questions. Okay? Right. Anything else?
Prof, question?
Yes.
Prof, question here. Just to confirm, on the individual assignment, there's no time, so I can open it now and go through the questions. I don't have to wait until I don't have to wait for later on. I'm saying on the individual assignment. Or once I open it, am I supposed to complete on the same day?
No. Look on the quiz questions. We have the time limit. Am I right?
Okay. Yes, we've got a time limit there.
But on the other questions, there's no time. There's no time limit.
So my question is, once I open it, do I have to complete it on the same day, or can I just open and go through the questions?
Yeah, you can do your PDF anytime up till Sunday evening.
So once I open it, won't be an issue that I left it without completing it.
No, Shingi, am I right here?
Shingi, please confirm.
Shingi? Because I don't know what the
All right.
practicalities.
Hello, Doc. Yes.
Tell me now. The student, if he opens, let's assume he opens tonight. The
Individual
PDF
one.
question. Right. Is he supposed to complete it now, or can he complete it later on?
You can complete it anytime. The
Anytime,
only thing that has a time limit is the quiz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only the quiz.
Okay.
It's only the quiz.
Okay, Shingi.
Okay.
Shingi, Shingi, so I can open it. I don't have to. I can open it, go through the questions, and maybe do the questions tomorrow, for example. That won't be a problem.
Yeah.
It won't be a problem because it has unlimited attempts, and there's no time limit.
And then the answers, do we submit there on the same link, or do we do it on? I mean, do we do it on that, or do we just answer the questions there? Because I mean,
Yes,
the previous one, you had to submit the PDF.
Yeah, according to the instructions on Moodle, it says completing the SmartBoot.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Right. On it. Anything else on the GDP? Okay. Now on inflation. Inflation questions. It's important, people. I'm not going through the questions. I'm going just to give you the crux of it. It is important that you look at pages 432 and 433. There they show you the CPI and how to calculate the inflation rate, especially on page 433, example 16.2. Right. So what you do, you take the index and you calculate the change in the index, and that is the inflation rate. Right, for that specific year. Right. So that's always the best way to do it. Right. Of course, one can always compare 5 years later with the base year. Okay, but then you get what happened with prices from 5 years later to the base year. And then you can't divide it by 5 and say this was the average inflation. Or you may say it's the average inflation, but it's not the inflation per annum. So what we need is what I showed you on Saturday. You need exactly what was the index for a specific year and what was the index in the base year. In the base year, we know it's 0. Oh, sorry, it's 100. Or you need exactly what was the CPI, the index in a specific month, like June, and you compare it with what was the index the previous year's June, 2017 versus 2016. And then you work out the percentage change, and that'll give you the inflation rate. True again, when you have all 12 months, then you work out the average. Okay, but it varies. It's not that the average is exactly the same every month. Okay, so I think page 432 and page 433 is more or less the crux of that chapter. Okay, and also very important, a very simple example on page 431. Right, on page 431. There you have the cost, remember, of that 2-bedroom apartment. You have the hamburgers at R2.50 each, the movie tickets at R7 each, and then you got a total expenditure. You got a cost in 2015, and you got a cost in 2010. Now, if you want to calculate if 2015 it costs more than 2010, all that you do, you take the price that it was in 2010. So now what you take then, the cost in 2010 is 500, and you take the hamburgers, and you take You take the cost in 2010, the movie tickets, the cost in 2010, and then you compare it with each other. So, so that is just, again, to work out back to the base year. Right. So that's why CPI is the cost of a base year basket in the current year over the cost of a base year basket of goods and services in the base year. Just compare the two of each other. In our example, the cost in 2015 was $850. The cost in 2010 was $680. So it gives us a 1.25%. A 1.25 means there was a 25% increase in the base year. That's why you always take the latest year divided by the base year, and then you get the index. Or sometimes they give you the index, and they give you the base year, then you just either multiply it or divide. It depends on what I ask. If they give you, if you give you the index 1.25, and they give you the CPI, and they give you the value of the basket in 2015 at 850, you take down the 850, divide by the 1.25, which also give you the 680. So that's why I think pages from page 430, the consumer price index and inflation, page 432 and 433, where you measure different inflation rates giving the CPI, of course, is the important pages in this textbook. Right. Then, of course, you can then, of course, use the same indexes to compare people's income, a family's income. If you have your income in 2010, and that's in page 432, if you have your income on 40,000 in 2010, and in 2015 your income have increased to 44,000, you have the CPI, then you can work out what happened with your income. If you take the 44,000, you divide it by 1.25, you get 35,200. So in comparison with 2010, your 44,000 income, the family's income, is only worth 35,200. In other words, their real income decreased. They got poorer. Okay. Do you want to understand that concept? Right? So those are the pages that I think is very important in these chapters. Right? These chapters. Then, of course, under employment, let's go back. Any questions on inflation? On inflation. I still believe those are the most important chapters. CPI, determining of the index and how it affects your income and how to calculate it. Right? Now, cost of living. Now, the last chapter we did was, we haven't got a lot of time, but wages and unemployment is not that difficult, with the exception that you have to understand the demand for labor according to table 17.1. Right? So make sure that you study and read and understand table 17.1, and then you can draw a curve, the demand curve for labor, that's nothing else than the marginal product of labor. Right. So that table 17.1 is very important, because if I have one worker and he will produce 25 computers per year, right, then his marginal product is 25. Right. So if I sell my computers in a market for $3,000 a computer, I will earn from that worker $75,000. Right. If I employ the second labor, together they will produce 48 computers, but the second laborer only produced 23. If you multiply the 23 with the 3,000, it's only 69. In other words, the second laborer only brings for the company in 69,000, less than the first one. So as I employ more and more labor, marginal product will start, the marginal product decreases, And the value of my product that I sell in the market, of course, starts to decrease. Now, all I now have to know is what's the ruling wage. If the ruling wage is 51,000, I know I will hire 5 laborers. Because the third laborer produces 17 computers, and you sell that at 3,000, 17 times 3 is 51,000. I will not employ a 6th laborer, because the 6th laborer will only give me 45,000, but the salary is 51,000. If I employed at that stage only 4 laborers, I still have some room, because the 4th laborer gives me 57,000, and the going salary of 51,000, I still got room. I'm making 6,000 extra profit. So the question of a laborer is always, sort of any company, of any employer, is it worthwhile to employ the next extra labor? Right. So you remember, in this chapter we haven't touched on minimum wages. Right. Now, minimum wages one can bring into this situation quite easily. If your minimum wage, for instance, is 45,000 per annum, which is about, in South Africa, 4,000, almost 4,000 a year, isn't it? What the new minimum wage will be? I think it's 3,000 something a month, I think 3,600. That would fit into our example on table 71. Let's think in rand terms. If the government now comes and say, right, the minimum wage is 45,000 rands a year, which is about 3,700 a month. What employers are going to do, they're going to work out the margin of product. So all laborers, which value of the labor of the margin of product is less than a 45,000, they're going to fire. And that's why minimum wages, in most cases, will lead to the offlaying of a lot of workers. Why? Because companies always will use this aspect. I'm not going to pay a laborer minimum wage if the output and the sales that he gives to me is less than his wage. Then I'm making a loss. That's always the problem of a minimum wage. So table 17.1 basically shows us marginal product, and the marginal product determines the demand curve for labor. You can see the demand for labor will increase up to that point when the marginal product equals to its wage. So if the wage is 51,000, I will employ 5 workers. If the wage increases to 63,000, I will only employ 3 workers. So that's the demand curve. It's derived from the marginal product. If wages increase, companies will demand less labor. Right. The supply of labor is something else. The supply of labor is just straightforward. It's your opportunity cost. Am I willing to work extra hours in the evening, get some extra money? If that's the case, I would supply my labor. Now, what firms and legislation in South Africa said, because you can open on a Sunday evening, Saturday in the mall, afternoon, or the Sunday in the morning, you can open, but then it's double payment. Okay? Because the wage, according to legislation, for the first 40 hours, I think, is full pay. From 40 to 45 hours, I think it's 1.5, and after that, it's double. So if you employ laborers, and always on Saturdays and Sundays, then you have to pay double the wage. Now you have to go into work out. If I double my wage, what will be the value of my sales on a Sunday? And if my shop doesn't bring in the sales that's double that wage, I'm going to close my shop. The problem that we have in South Africa is that shopping centers say, no way, it's not working like that. The Mall of Africa, you sign a contract. In the contract states that the mall will be open on a Sunday from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the evening. You don't have a choice. You have to open. You see, so these are all the problems around companies, profits, and the amount of labor which they will, of course, will hire. So those are I think, the important chapters, pages. Then, of course, the other important thing is table 17.2, right? Real wages, the increase in demand. When will the demand for labor increase? Right? Now, the demand for labor will increase. That's shifting the whole curve out. Is if the real wage increase. If your real wage increase, more people. If your real wage increase, more labor will be demanded. Now, the reason for that is an increase in the price of the worker's output increases the value of the marginal product. So if at the same wage, laborers work harder, right? The demand curve for labor will shift out. That's why the whole question in countries like Thailand, Taiwan, Singapore, where people are willing to work 13, 14, 15 hours a day. So now they will increase their real wage or the marginal product. Now the problem is, what about health and leisure and all the other safety situations amongst labor? No one can continue to work on 15 hours a day. Another question is, what about child labor? So all those social issues will kick in. So on page 462, marginal product of labor and increase in real wages. Right. Then the last thing about this chapter is about the different types of unemployment. Right? We have the three types. I said it to you on Saturday and I want to repeat it. You get it on page 478 to page 480. Because we asked a question on that. Right. So the frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is where a lot of people, of course, they are willing out of a job, right? And in most cases, it will lead to the fact that the labor market is not able to match the available jobs, right? If all jobs, workers were the same, or if the set of jobs workers were static and unchangeable, the matching process would be easy, right? The thing about this is that jobs differ in location and the skills they require. So, frictional unemployment has got to do with a skills mismatch. And that's the biggest problem in South Africa. It's a skills mismatch. So in other words, as if laborers will not be trained and retrained and be making use of technological advances, improve their skills, to be frictional unemployment, right? The frictional unemployment is the short-term unemployment associated with the process of matching workers with jobs. There are jobs, there are job seekers, but the job seekers don't have the skills. And that is, I think, still one of the biggest problems in South Africa. Again, I'll give you an example. Mr. Gigavas yesterday told us that they want to do something about youth unemployment. Now, to address the youth unemployment, he will now subsidize the higher education. The idea is that more and more poorer students will get access to higher education. They will employ their skills, and then they will be employable. So they won't be frictional anymore. The problem that we sit in South Africa is that I'm not worried about the 400,000 matrics that may go to university. So we spend a lot of money and a lot of effort onto those students. My problem still is, what are we going to do with the other 600,000 that didn't even reach grade 12? How are we going to solve that frictional unemployment? Right, because they don't have skills, they always will be out of work because the jobs that are available doesn't match their skills. Now that's a big problem in South Africa, and no budget over the last 15 years have addressed this problem. They're looking at youth unemployment, but my problem is, how are you going to uplift the skills of youth so that they can match the amount of jobs or jobs available? Structural unemployment, this is when, of course, over a long time, when the economy is chronic in unemployment that exists even when the economy is producing at a normal rate. There is something wrong here with the long-term management, person skills and workers. The frictional unemployment is more a short-term unemployment situation. You're in a job, you lose your job, you retrain yourself, and then you're available. So you are being jobs. Structural unemployment is like more that we have in South Africa. We need more engineers, we need more plumbers, we need more electricians, artisans, etc. But the mass out there, a lot of students that could not even pass grade 10 will never get that skills. That's structural unemployment, right? So when there's a long-term mismatch between the skills some workers have and available jobs, right? And then lastly, of course, we get cyclical unemployment, right? If the economy is in a recession, people will be out of jobs. Okay. So that's it. Any other questions? India, I think I've now spoken enough.
Sorry, sir?
Any other questions?
Oh.
Okay, the last thing I want to say is that you will have a reading list next week for next week's assignment. I will make sure that it's been loaded by Sunday, because I'm going to ask you the practical things about South Africa's economic growth, GDP, inflation, and unemployment. I'm going to load down 2 or 3 very popular articles that you can read, and then you must be able to get the data from the sources I gave you, Stats SA and Reserve Bank. You must be able to draw me some curve, a graph or a graphical illustration, and then you have to write an opinion on what you think about South Africa's economic growth, South Africa's inflation, and South Africa's unemployment. So there will be some reading material. It's not a lot, so that we can make sure that you have some material to help you in answer that question. Sorry, more than one. Okay. Right, guys, are we finished?
Thank you for your time, Doc.
No problem. No problem. I just want to tell you I'm going to for a very serious back operation on the 6th of March. My disc disintegrated. So I will be there on the 3rd, and I'm going to sit the whole time. I'm going through a lot of pain, But I will make sure that we do all the evaluation before the operation on the 6th. Right? And then from there on, anything in future, you have my mail number, you have my number, you can always contact me.
Get well, Prof.
Thank you, eh? Thank you, Zingy.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
just a quick question. Just a quick comment, guys. The grade book should be up on Sunday or Monday morning once I receive all the grades. So you will be able to see week 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, and just also, there also will be a very nice, complete memorandum on the questions. Okay? But you can exactly see where you make your mistakes and what it should have been.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Prof.
Thank you,
Bye.
Doctor.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.